Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala, thumma amma ba'd. To proceed. So welcome to our new location. There will be certainly issues along the way. This is one of the issues. I'm hearing myself a little too much. There's going to be a lot of echo. Yeah. Okay. So, inshallah, we'll try to do our best. Try without the mic. If we open the door in the back, will this decrease the echo? Okay, well, let's try now. Maybe a little better. How did you turn it on? Okay. So inshallah today we will have Bab Maqam al-Murad, the station of al-Murad or the sought. And later in the fiqh session we will talk about zakat of merchandise, zakat urud al-tijara, zakat of merchandise, and we will talk about zakat al-fitr inshallah. Zakat al-fitr and zakat urud al-tijara, zakat of merchandise. So first, Maqam al-Murad. Sheikh al-Harawi rahimahullah said, Babu Maqam al-Murad, chapter on the station of the Murad. And this is his book Manazil As-Saa'ireen, stations of the Wayfarer or the Wayfarers. And Imam al-Harawi died in the year 480 after Hijrah. And we have 100 stations in this book. We are covering station number 50 today. Since we started, alhamdulillah, we finished 50 stations and we have 50 more to go. So today is the 50th station. And the next one will be the segment on the valleys, spiritual valleys. And the first chapter or station of that segment will be al-Ihsan or excellence. The Sheikh rahimahullah said chapter on the station of al-Murad or the sought. So al-Murad, everybody here is familiar with al-Murid, right? Murid is a seeker. The Murid is the seeker. Al-Murad is just the passive voice of Al-Murid. Al-Murid in the passive voice would be Al-Murad. Murid in the passive voice would be Al-Murad. Which means what? If the Murid is the seeker, the Murad will be the sought. And if the Murid is the one who seeks Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Al-Murad is the one who is sought by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Al-Murad is the one who is sought by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the Shaykh said, قال الله عز وجل وما كنت ترجو أن يلقى إليك الكتاب. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, and you were not expecting that the book would be conveyed to you. Yulqa means thrown down. Yulqa here would mean sent down. Sent down to you. You were not. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he was telling him, you were not expecting that the book would be sent down to you. When the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to go out to Ghar Hira for his tahannuth, for his worship, meditation, for his meditation, mainly meditation, the Prophet was not expecting that he will become a messenger. In fact, he was surprised that, when he had his first encounter with Jibreel alayhi salam, he was extremely surprised by it, and he was not expecting of it. Likewise, the prophets and messengers, we say that prophethood is what? Amr wahbi or kasbi. What's the difference between wahbi and kasbi? Wahbi is a gift from hiba, a gift that is given to you from Allah. Kasbi is from kasb, which is earning. You earn it. You earn your ranking with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But prophethood is not kasbi, which means what? The prophet, that you just don't work harder and become a prophet. You don't learn more and become a prophet. You don't seek more refinement, purification, elevation, spiritual refinement, purification, and elevation, and then all of a sudden you cross a threshold and you become a prophet. It's wahbi, it's a gift from Allah. Allah yastafi man yasha. Allah selects, chooses whomever He pleases. So this is in part like the concept that we're talking about. It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala selecting you, seeking you before you seek Him. So al-murad is the one who's sought by Allah, versus al-murid is the one who seeks Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But then we will come back and talk how we will need to understand this within the larger framework of Allah's justice and Allah's fairness. The Sheikh said, أكثر المتكلمين في هذا العلم جعلوا المريد والمراد اثنين وجعلوا مقام المراد فوق مقام المريد. So most of those who spoke about this discipline of knowledge made the murid, the seeker, and the murad, the sought, two different things, and considered the station of the murad higher than that of the murid. Absolutely. I mean, if you will consider them two different things, then the one who is being sought by Allah is a higher station than the seeker. And then he said, وإنما أشاروا باسم المراد إلى الضنائن الذين ورد فيهم الخبر. They referred by the term al-murad, the sought, to the chosen ones mentioned in the report. To the chosen ones mentioned in the report. What is the report? The report is a hadith reported by Ibn Abi Dunya with a weak chain of narration. Weak chain of narration, in which it was attributed to the Prophet ﷺ that he said, إِنَّ لِلَّهِ ضَنَائِنَ مِنْ خَلْقِهِ يَضِنُّ بِهِمْ عَنِ الْبَلَاءِ يُحْيِيهِمْ فِي عَافِيَةٍ وَيُمِيتُهُمْ فِي عَافِيَةٍ وَيُدْخِلُهُمُ الْجَنَّةَ فِي عَافِيَةٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, إِنَّ لِلَّهِ ضَنَائِنَ مِنْ خَلْقِهِ. Allah has those chosen ones of His creations that He's too protective of, to subject them to trials. يَضِنُّ بِهِمْ عَنِ الْبَلَاءِ. That He's too protective of, to subject them to trials. يُحْيِيهِمْ فِي عَافِيَةٍ. He makes them live in complete well-being. وَيُمِيتُهُمْ فِي عَافِيَةٍ. And die in complete well-being. وَيُدْخِلُهُمُ الْجَنَّةَ فِي عَافِيَةٍ. And will admit them into paradise, or cause them to enter paradise in complete well-being, without harm, without being subject or subjected to harm. Now you may say, but this is in conflict with some other hadith where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, for instance, tells us, أشد الناس بلاء الأنبياء ثم الأمثل فالأمثل. The people that will be tried the most are the prophets, and then those who are closest, and then those who are closest. And there are multitudes of hadith about the reward of bala and how people are chosen for trials, to be tested and to be refined and to be elevated. So how do we reconcile? We don't need to reconcile. If you have a hadith sahiha and hadith da'if, you don't need to reconcile between sahih and da'if. You don't need to reconcile between the Quran and the Sahih Hadith and anything except for mental axioms and things perceptible by the senses. And another ayah or Hadith Sahih, right? Otherwise, you don't need to reconcile. So you don't need to reconcile between philosophical theories or logical theories or precepts of logic, except for the mental axioms. Mental axioms are also part of logic. What is, like what? So the Aristotelian formulated law of non-contradiction. You need to reconcile anything with that, because non-contradiction is not, one thing cannot be and not be at the same time in the same respect. That is a mental axiom. You really can't defy that mental axiom. The whole is bigger than the part. It's a mental axiom. You can't defy that mental axiom. Likewise, things that are perceptible by the senses. So you do need to reconcile your understanding of the ayat and the hadith with mental axioms and things perceptible by the senses. Not with intellectual conventions, not with social conventions, not with a da'if hadith, not with anything else. That's it. So the wahy, authentically related wahy, has to be reconciled with authentically related divine instruction or mental axioms or things perceptible by the senses. Things perceptible by the senses. And that's it. So here we have some authentic hadith and we have some seeming contradiction with some weak hadith. How do we reconcile? We don't need to reconcile. However, having said that, does that mean that the whole concept is an invalid concept? The concept of al-hadith al-da'if is an invalid concept. You have to be very careful about this. The fact that the hadith is da'if does not mean the meaning of it is da'if. First of all, the weak hadith are acted upon by the vast majority of scholars in certain areas. If they don't establish new rulings and if they don't basically contradict an established concept or established principle or established maxim, they are acted upon by the vast majority of scholars. There are very, very few scholars who did not act upon the hadith al-da'ifa. Imam Ahmad used to favor al-hadith al-da'if over al-qiyas, over analogy. So that is the ongoing tradition. The ongoing tradition is to act upon al-hadith al-da'ifa with certain conditions. They should not be too weak. There should not be in conflict with some other established principle in the deen. There should not be in conflict with, in an irreconcilable conflict with another hadith that is sahih, and so on and so forth. So the meaning here of this particular hadith is not to be completely dismissed. إِنَّ لِلَّهِ ضَنَائِنَ مِنْ خَلْقِهِ يَضِنُّ بِهِمْ عَنِ الْبَلَاءِ يُحْيِيهِمْ فِي عَافِيَةٍ وَيُمِيتُهُمْ فِي عَافِيَةٍ وَيُدْخِلُهُمُ الْجَنَّةَ فِي عَافِيَةٍ. Allah has those chosen of His creations that He's too protective of to subject them to trials. He will make them live in complete well-being, die in complete well-being, and be enter paradise in complete well-being. The concept here that we can accept, we cannot accept the concept that people who are tried because they are basically sort of lesser than the people who have not been tried or that do not get tried, or they are not as deserving or not as worthy as the people who get tried. Because if the prophets are the people to be tried the most, then we cannot claim that anyone else exceeds them in virtue or ranking. But we could say that, for the people who, certain chosen people do not get tried. Allah chooses them to have a life of prosperity and to not be tried, and this would be His will. He wills whatever He pleases. Like We could say that Sayyidina Sulaiman, although there is a mention of a trial for Sayyidina Sulaiman, but his trials certainly were much, much less than anyone else. I mean, he grew up in prosperity, and Dawood alayhi salam was his father, and Dawood was a king also, and he became a king after Dawood alayhi salam. He was given kingdom or a dominion that has not been given to someone before him or after him. So he lived in Afiyah and he died in Afiyah. He was also a prophet. He was not like a sort of just a king. He was also a prophet. So he lived in Afiyah and died in Afiyah. Inshallah will enter paradise in Afiyah. So you could say that some people do actually have pretty easy lives, and for them, they should not be looking for trials, basically for their refinement and elevation, purification. They should be content. They should ask Allah for afiyah, they should ask Allah for complete well-being, and they should be content with their easy lives. They should certainly excel in worship and excel in coming closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but it is not necessary to be tried, to be elevated or purified. You could be purified without being tried. You could also say that this hadith would mean, would support the concept of al-murad, the sought, that Allah seeks certain people out for elevation, for purification, for refinement. Allah seeks them. Certainly Allah does seek them. Because if Allah does not seek you, you cannot seek Him to begin with, right? So you seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala means that you have been invited, right? Because without that invitation, you cannot seek Him. You can't on your own find Him. You can't on your own seek Him. You can't on your own find Him. It has to be by invitation. It is only by invitation. So to some extent, no murid is not murad, right? No seeker is not sought. Because in order for you to seek Him, He will have to have decreed that He wants you. So even Ibn Ata rahimahullah said that if He makes you ask Him, if he facilitates dua for you, then He wanted to respond. He wanted to answer you. He wanted to grant you what you want. If He makes the dua easy for you. That is why our righteous predecessors used to say, we're not concerned about ijaba, we're concerned about our dua. We're not concerned about the response. We're concerned about, the dua itself. If our dua is sincere and genuine, the response is guaranteed. So I'm really not concerned about the response. نحن لا أحمل هم الإجابة وإنما أحمل هم الدعاء. I am not really concerned about the response. I am just concerned about the dua. To make a genuine, sincere dua should be your concern. So in some sense, every murid is a murad. Every seeker is to some extent sought. So why is he making them two different stations if every murid should be murad? And if every murad should be also a seeker, because Allah will not want someone who does not want Allah. Would Allah want someone who does not want Allah? No, Allah would not want someone who does not want Him. So in that case, but Allah may facilitate your path to Him, facilitate the road, may extend you an invitation and facilitate, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they gave this example of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sending messengers, or someone, not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, someone sending a messenger to invite you to their walima, for instance. They just go and tell you, you're invited to this walima on that day at that particular location and so on, and that's it. But there are people who, will be invited and someone will tell them, we will come and pick you up on that day. And some people will get reminders, and then they will get like a ride also, a free ride by, the Sahib al-Walima, or the person inviting them to the Walima. And that is a valid concept. How do we understand this concept? We have to understand it within that framework, the larger framework of Allah's justice and Allah's fairness. Because when al-Yahud and Nasara, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَقَالَتِ الْيَهُودُ وَالنَّصَارَى نَحْنُ أَبْنَاءُ اللَّهِ وَأَحِبَّاؤُهُ قُلْ فَلِمَ يُعَذِّبُكُم بِذُنُوبِكُم بَلْ أَنْتُمْ بَشَرٌ مِّمَّنْ خَلَقَ يَغْفِرُ لِمَن يَشَاءُ وَيُعَذِّبُ مَن يَشَاءُ وَلِلَّهِ مُلْكُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَمَا بَيْنَهُمَا وَإِلَيْهِ الْمَصِيرُ. So the Jews and Christians said, we are the children of Allah and His beloved ones. Say to them, why does He then punish you for your misdeeds? بَلْ أَنْتُمْ بَشَرٌ مِّمَّنْ خَلَقَ. Nay, you are human beings like the rest of His creations, human beings that He created. مِّمَّنْ خَلَقَ يَغْفِرُ لِمَن يَشَاءُ وَيُعَذِّبُ مَن يَشَاءُ. He forgives whomever He pleases, and He punishes whomever He pleases, or torments whomever He pleases. وَلِلَّهِ مُلْكُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَمَا بَيْنَهُمَا وَإِلَيْهِ الْمَصِيرُ. To Allah belongs the dominion of the heavens and the earth, and to Him is the return. But what is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying to them here? No, don't say this. Don't make those claims that you are special. Don't make those claims that you are special. You're like the rest of Allah's creations. Don't say we are Allah's children and He's beloved, because you are just the rest of, like the rest of Allah's creations. So we should not be making those claims. We should not be having this ujb or self-conceit to consider ourselves special or anything. And we should understand that when Allah seeks someone, Allah sought them still within the framework of His justice and fairness. It is not just the pure favoritism. It is within the framework of Allah's justice and fairness, and we have to keep this always in mind. Does the Prophet ﷺ deserve to be a step higher than the rest of the prophets and messengers, even though all of them deserve the highest of stations? But does the Prophet ﷺ deserve? You could always say Allah made him deserving, but he deserves it also. And that is the sort of that is al-amr alladhi tahar fihi al-uqul. That is the thing that you will always wonder about. We will always wonder about the concept of qadar, the concept of predetermination or predestination. Amrun tahar fi al-uqul. But we have to be mindful of Allah's fairness and justice all the time, and don't think of ourselves as special. And ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we will come back at the end of this talk, and because most of the talk here will not be about what you will do, will be about what Allah does to you, because here you are the one being sought. You're not the seeker, you're the one that is being sought. And then the Shaykh will start to divide that station into the 3 degrees. He says, وَلِلْمُرَادْ ثَلَاث دَرَجَاتٍ. There are 3 levels for the murad, and he will divide them into 3 degrees. What is it that we are looking for here? What is it that we're looking for? Because all of this will be what Allah will do to you, not what you will do to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or nothing here that is mentioned is about you. There is no action plan for you here. It is all a description of what Allah does to those that Allah chooses, that Allah selects to be devoted or to be invited by Him. I think that the main benefit here is to understand, or to have to be able to recognize when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala seeks you. And is that important? Yeah. Many people always say, how do we know our ranking with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How do we know where we are with Allah? Our significance in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How do we know about this? How do I know that Allah is pleased with me? And Ibn Ata rahimahullah also said, إذا أردت أن تعرف قدرك فانظر فيما يقيمك. إذا أردت أن تعرف قدرك فانظر فيما يقيمك. If you want to know your standing with Allah, then look at where you stand. Or look at where He made you stand. Look at where He made you stand. If you want to know your standing with Allah, look at where He made you stand. Are you standing in prayer, for instance, in the middle of the night? Then that's where you belong. That is your maqam. Later, the scholars had modified it, and they sort of shortened the phrase to be more sort of to rhyme more, and they said مقامك حيث أقامك. مقامك حيث أقامك, which means your station is where He made you stand. Maqamuk is your station. Haythu aqamak is where He made you stand. So if you're busy taking care of your children or visiting the sick, helping the needy, coming to the masjid, learning ilm salih for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, praying at night, this is where you belong. This is where He made you stand. And that is where your maqam is. So it is pretty easy. It's pretty easy. Now, all the levels that the Shaykh will talk about, it is about, it's about this. So if you want to know your maqam, learn those levels and see if He is seeking you or not. He says, Al-Ula, the first level here, أن يعصم العبد وهو مستشرف للجفاء اضطرارا. أن يعصم العبد وهو مستشرف للجفاء اضطرارا. The first level is where He protects, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where He protects His servant by force when he or she attempts an imprudence. Jafa is imprudence. The imprudence, of disobedience, the imprudence of walking away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All of this is jafa. The first level is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects you by force, by seizure, by compulsion. Like you really want to mess up. And He prevents you, He holds you back. He prevents you from disobedience. And He forbids you from that tendency or that attempt at wickedness. So he says, how does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do this? How does He by force protect you from your own imprudence and your own jahl, your own ignorance? بتنغيس الشهوات. 1, بتنغيس الشهوات, spoiling the desires. 2 is pretty similar, وتعويق الملاذ, barring the pleasures, spoiling the desires, barring the pleasures. Whatever it is that you desire, because الدنيا حلوة خضرة, إن الدنيا حلوة خضرة, وإن الله مستخلفكم فيها فناظر كيف تعملون. Dunya is beautiful and green, fresh and beautiful, and the shahawat are tempting. In fact, in Surah Al-A'raf, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, in Surah Al-A'raf, Allah tells us that the shaitan said to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, قال فبما أغويتني لأقعدن لهم صراطك المستقيم ثم لآتينهم من بين أيديهم ومن خلفهم وعن أيمانهم وعن شمائلهم ولا تجد أكثرهم شاكرين. The shaitan said to Allah, because of how you misguided me, I will ambush them by your straight path, and then I will come to them from the front, from the back, from the right side, and from the left side. From every side, people get ambushed from all sides. Qatada said he will never be able to come to you from the top, because that's your connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But then I'll come to them from all sides. And Ibn Abbas interpreted this to mean what? Coming to them from the front, tazyin ad-dunya. It's to beautify, glorify, magnify in their eyes the dunya. Coming to them from the back is tashkikun fil akhirah. It's to raise doubts about an afterlife. To raise doubts in their hearts and minds about the presence of an afterlife. Coming from the right side is what? Is basically to make distasteful to them the hasanat, the good deeds. Good deeds are right side or right hand, good deeds. He will make them distasteful, hard, cumbersome, unpleasant, up until we overcome him, and then they will become pleasant. And then coming from the left side, basically he will adorn, make very tempting the sayyat, the misdeeds. So that's the shaitan's plan. So if that's the shaitan's plan, and you should struggle against this plan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to beautify and basically make tempting the misdeeds, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ruin them. So the things that people desire the most, the carnal, fleshy desires of the body that people desire the most and find the most tempting, they'll be distasteful to you. Once they are, you know that you have been invited, that you are being sought. And it does not mean that you will have no shahwa. It does not mean that you will have no, basically, urge. You will have no sort of desire. It just means that, your reflection, your thoughts of the hereafter, and or of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ruin that temptation, will ruin that pleasure, will ruin that desire, spoil it. That it would just be disgusting. So whenever the shaitan throws any like bad thoughts in your mind, they will be repugnant to you, repulsive, disgusting, because of your immediate thought of Allah. وَلَقَدْ هَمَّتْ بِهِ وَهَمَّ بِهَا لَوْلَا أَن رَأَى بُرْهَانَ رَبِّهِ. Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam, hammat bihi, wa hamma biha, and he had almost reached out to her, لولا أن رأى برهان ربه, had he not seen the proof of his Lord, like a sign from his Lord, Keep in mind that the best way here to recite this is to say, وَلَقَدْ هَمَّتْ بِهِ, and to stop. There is a stop there. وَلَقَدْ هَمَّتْ بِهِ. She reached out to him. And then you start. وَهَمَّ بِهَا لَوْلَا أَن رَأَى بُرْهَانَ رَبِّهِ. And he reached out to her. Had he not, he would have reached out, which would mean here, he would have reached out to her had he not seen a sign from his Lord. Because his human makeup would make him desire her. She is exceedingly beautiful. So it would have made him desire him. His human creation would have made him desire her had he not. But because he saw the sign from his Lord, because he remembered, just like Allah reminded him of the evil of this and the wickedness of this transgression. And then he did not reach out to her to begin with. It was not like, that he attempted anything and then he stopped. No, he did not make an attempt because he saw a sign from his Lord. So the ma'asiyah becomes repulsive. تنغيص الشهوات وتعويق الملاذ, spoiling the desires, barring the pleasures. Not because you're not human anymore and you don't have that tendency anymore, you don't have that urge, that desire anymore. No, because of the overriding thought of, the displeasure of Allah, the overriding thoughts of the consequences of the sin, the outcome, the aftermath, that overriding thought will prevail and will make that sin repulsive and disgusting. It's just like, someone who, someone, and I don't want to say this because the anorexia is a disease, but you see how, like, people who are particularly, like, too conscious of their weight, like, and they see food and sometimes they get nauseous just by the sight of the food because they're thinking of the consequences. They think if I indulge, or not just indulge, if I eat, a little bit of the sweets, then I may gain weight, and the food becomes sort of repulsive to them, just the very sight of it. And certainly anorexia is a disease, and I don't want you to be sick, but this is the concept anyway. But you don't have to be anorexic, but if you're just watching your weight and then you see desserts, sometimes you feel, despite the fact that prior to this you may have really desired to eat, and to eat a lot of it, but now that you're watching your weight and you're thinking of the consequences prevail in your mind, then the dessert will look very distasteful to you. That's the concept anyway. So, تنغيص الشهوات وتعويق الملاذ, spoiling the desires, barring the pleasures. And this would be a great gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You could imagine like a diabetic, for instance, who hates sweets. Isn't that a great gift from Allah? If you're a diabetic, to hate sweets, every time you eat sweets, you vomit or you get nauseous or something happens to you, that you will be conditioned over time to hate them. Whether you will not be conditioned over time to hate them and to hate the smell of sweets. We're like this, the ma'asi, if we think of the outcome of ma'asi, not only in the akhirah, but also in the dunya, if we're thoughtful, mindful of the outcome of ma'asi, they will be repugnant, they will be repulsive. So that's the first thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would do for the ones that are being sought. And then he said, بتنغيص الشهوات وتعويق الملاذ وسد مسالك المعاطب عليه إكراها, and closing the paths to ruin in their face by force. Closing the paths to ruin. Not only that he will make them distasteful, but he will make them unreachable. He will make ma'asi unreachable. He will, close doors in front of you. He will close the gates. You want to walk down that path, he closes it. And it could be like you wanted to major in a particular, you wanted a particular major in college, for instance, and he doesn't let you major in that field because he knows at the end of that road, if you go there and you work this job, eventually at the end you may end up losing your faith, you may end up being wicked, being corrupt, being this, being that. So he just closes the door. You will not know that. At the time you may feel sort of grieved by the loss or this or that, but you did not know it. That's why وَعَسَىٰ أَن تَكْرَهُوا شَيْئًا وَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ. You may dislike a thing and there would be much good therein for you. وَسَدِّ مَسَالِكِ الْمَعَاطِبِ عَلَيْهِ إِكْرَاهًا, and closing the paths to ruin in their face by force. Keep in mind, if you are not there, it does not mean that Allah dislikes you. If you are being tried, if you have this strong sort of desire for things that are suboptimal or things that are sinful, it may very well be that you're being tested, that your test is being intensified, and that eventually Allah, because keep in mind, for for everyone to actualize their potential, they actualize their potential based on what that potential is, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala meant for their potential, what potential Allah wants them to actualize, and their personal inclinations. So for some people, the actualization of their potential is by going through hard tests and succeeding. And for some people, the actualization of the potential is by Allah closing the doors and making things unappealing to them. Just unappealing. And then they will actualize their potential this way. But for other people, they don't actualize their potential by the doors being closed in their face. They actualize their potential by all the doors being open. And they have this strong urge and strong desire for everything, for all the ma'asi. Everything looks tempting. But they continue to fight and struggle and resist with willpower, resolve, resoluteness, until they make it, to the shores of safety. And for those people, that is their actualization of their potential. So if you feel that you, but at the end of the day, for all of us, people who commit sins without any form of or any remorse whatsoever, they have to know those people are far away from Allah. People who commit sins without any remorse, they are far away from Allah at the time they committed that sin. Certainly no one should give up until the rattle of death, gargara. No one should give up. But if you feel that that you commit sins, and sins are not just limited to the popular sins or the external sins. Sins of the heart are much greater and much worse than the sins of the body. But if you feel that you're committing sins and you're not having any remorse, then you know that you're far away from Allah. But the people who are fighting and struggling and so on, they should not, perceive this as being basically removed from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Some people will have their path facilitated, will have their road paved for them, but some people will not. And everyone will actualize their potential as decreed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if they strive for His sake. Then the Shaykh said, وَالدَّرَجَةُ الثَّانِيَةُ أَنْ يَضَعَ عَنِ الْعَبْدِ عَوَارِضَ النَّقْصِ. The second level is to relieve the servant from the temporal outcomes of his or her shortcomings. Now that the first level, he will keep you from shortcomings. He will protect you from sin. He will protect you from even falling short. So he will give you the energy to pray. He will give you the energy to concentrate on your prayer. He will give you the clarity of mind. He will give you all of that. But then, كُلُّ بَنِي آدَمْ خَطَّاء, right? All of the children of Adam are prone to error. So when you fall into error, His most beloved, the ones that He sought to be devoted, when they fall into error, He basically protects them from the aftermath, from the consequences of this error. يَضَعْ عَنِ الْعَبْدِ عَوَارِضَ النَّقْصِ, relieve the servant from the temporal outcomes of his or her shortcomings. وَيُعَافِيهِ مِنْ سِمَةِ اللَّائِمَةِ, spare him or her of reproach. وَيُمَلِّكُهُ عَوَاقِبَ الْهَفَوَاتِ, and give him or her control over the consequences of their blunders. Control over the consequences of their blunders. So your blunders will not cause you to slip and fall and break your neck. No, you will be able to regain your balance very quickly. You'll slip a little bit, but He will quickly allow you to regain your balance and to carry on your path. Even though you slipped, you did slip, but you will regain your balance very quickly. وَيُمَلِّكُهُ عَوَاقِبَ الْهَافَوَاتِ, and give him or her control over the consequences of their blunders. And then he gives you an example. كما فعل بسليمان عليه السلام حين قتل الخيل فحمله على الريح الرخاء والعاصف فأغناه عن الخيل، وفعل بموسى عليه السلام حين ألقى الألواح وأخذ برأس أخيه ولم يعتب عليه كما عتب على آدم ونوح وداود ويونس. So كما فعل بسليمان عليه السلام, as he did with Sulaiman عليه السلام, حين قتل الخيل, when he killed the horses. Killed the horses, whether Sulaiman killed them or groomed them, with his own hands afterwards, it's controversial what he did. فَطَفِقَ مَسْحًا بِالسُّوقِ وَالْأَعْنَاقِ. It's controversial what this means, whether he actually slaughtered them. But if he slaughtered them, then we will have to assume that he distributed the meat, because a prophet, like a great prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, would just not slaughter for torture and for nonsense. So he slaughtered them, probably distributed their meat. He liked his horses so much, they kept and he missed his wird, after Asr. So he decided that the horses that became a trial for him and became so tempting for him that he would, that he would slaughter them all. And then we assume that he distributed the meat or made use of it or something. But then the other interpretation is that فَطَفِقَ مَسْحًا بِالسُّقِ وَالْأَعْنَاقِ. Mashan means to wipe. That he groomed them by himself afterwards, to basically show humility to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because he was looking at them being displayed, passing in front of him, being displayed before him, and then he wanted to humble himself and show humility to Allah. So he either groomed them by himself, watched them groom them by himself, or he slaughtered them because they kept him from the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the time of remembrance. So, but when he did this, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not blame him. He carried him on the wind, the gentle and the stormy. So he was given a substitute for the horses. So the Sheikh is taking the interpretation that he killed the horses, and he's taking the interpretation that this was suboptimal of him, alayhi salam, to have killed the horses. And it was also, that whole incident took place after, the display of horses distracted him from his wird of dhikr. So there was like some shortcoming here, on the part of Sulaiman alayhi salam, whether it's by the killing of the horses or being distracted prior to this by the horses, there was some shortcoming. But at the end, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him, instead of the horses, the wind. So Allah carried him upon the wind. And certainly that is greater than the horses. So he was given a substitute for the horses. And then وَفَعَلَ بِمُوسَى عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامِ حِينَ أَلْقَى الْأَلْوَاحِ وَأَخَذَ بِرَأْسِ أَخِيهِ. Likewise, he did with Musa alayhi salam when he threw the tablets down and grabbed his brother's head. وَلَمْ يَعْتِبْ عَلَيْهِ كَمَا عَتَبَ عَلَى آدَمْ وَنُوحْ وَدَاوُودْ وَيُونُس. He did not blame him like he did with Adam, Dawood, and Yunus. So everybody was blamed for their shortcomings. Adam, Dawood, and Yunus were blamed. Yunus was blamed when he left the village. Adam was blamed when he ate from the tree. And Dawood was blamed when he made a quick judgment about a case of dispute before he listened to both parties. So all of them were blamed for their shortcomings. But Musa was not blamed when he did this to his brother. Those are the tablets that he was given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He threw them down because he used, and this is so beautiful, because you have to understand that people have different personal inclinations. And some people are, they have the different types of temper. And so Musa alayhi salam, and as Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah says, Ibn al-Qayyim talks about, that Musa كان على هيئة الجلال وجاءت شريعته كذلك. Musa used to be in the form of Jalal, might, glory, powerful, assertive, glorious in everything he does, splitting the sea and everything. So كان على هيئة الجلال وجاءت شريعته كذلك. وعيسى كان على هيئة الجمال وجاءت شريعته كذلك. And Isa, he took the attribute of, the attribute of beauty, and his sharia was likewise. It's about mercy, and it's about gentleness, and ومحمد كان على هيئة الكمال وجاءت شريعته كذلك. And Muhammad صلى الله عليه وسلم was basically, it took the attribute of perfection, the perfect balance between Jamal and Jalal. Because both sets of attributes, the attributes of Jalal, rigor, glory and rigor, belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right or wrong? Because keep in mind, what makes what makes a lot of people, particularly from a Christian background, lose faith is when they see, how could this happen? How could there be famines? How could there be earthquakes? These are the attributes of rigor. And if you will not accept those attributes of rigor, your whole worldview will crumble. If it's just about, unconditional love, which is nowhere, God in the Bible, there is nowhere. And if you put Google unconditional love, I'm branching off, but it's okay. So William Lane Craig, for instance, he was talking about, because William Lane Craig used the ilm al-kalam, or used used some of ilm al-kalam in his basically defense of the existence of God. So in order for him to say, and this is the Muslim ilm al-kalam, in order for him to say, no, I don't have, and particularly nowadays everybody needs to say that, no, I have nothing to do with Islam, and I actually am not warm to Islam whatsoever. He makes sure to say why Islam is inferior to Christianity, and then he says, and the thing that he keeps on repeating is that the God in Christianity is a God with unconditional love. He is the ultimate, the perfect, the greatest being, because he has unconditional love. And if you just Google, does God love unconditionally, or the unconditional love of God, you will find, multitudes of priests and pastors who are saying that this notion is completely false, proven from the Bible, from 70 plus verses in the Bible, that this notion is completely false. It is a completely false notion. And without you understanding that all things are from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, al-qadar khayrihi wa sharrihi, without you coming to terms with qadar, predestination, and everything in this dominion being under his control, whether it looks good or not, it is good or bad. Qadar khayrihi wa sharrihi. The qadar, good and evil, is from him, subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the sharr la yunsab ilayhi. Evil is not attributed to him, because the evil that happens in this universe, within his master plan, within this sort of theodicy of perpetual optimism, within the master plan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is not absolute evil. And it may not be attributed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But everything comes from Allah? Yes, everything comes from Allah. So these attributes of rigor come from Allah, Jalal, come from Allah, yes. And then there is punishment all over the Bible, and the Quran, Allah punishes the wrongdoers and punishes the disbelievers, and so on and so forth. And so these are attributes of Jalal. And attributes of Jamal, the attributes of Jamal, the attributes of beauty, the attributes of mercy, attributes of this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted the Sharia of Musa to be the Sharia of Jalal, and wanted the Sharia of Isa to be the Sharia of Jamal. Keep in mind, why is this? Because the Sharia of Isa complemented the Sharia of Musa. It was not independent of it. So the law was there, and Isa alayhi salam did not come to break the law, violate the law. Absolutely. He said that I came to uphold the law. So the Sharia of Isa is not to be seen independently from the Sharia of Musa. It came to complement it. So it came to infuse spirituality and infuse, mercy and infuse all of those attributes of Jamal into a Sharia of Jalal, of rigor and glory, to be balanced. But the Sharia of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because it was independent, وَمُهَيْمِنًا عَلَيْهِ وَأَنزَلْنَا إِلَيْكَ الْكِتَابَ بِالْحَقِّ مُصَدِّقًا لِمَا بَيْنَ يَدَيْهِ مِنَ الْكِتَابِ وَمُهَيْمِنًا عَلَيْهِ. And we had sent down the book to you in truth, مُصَدِّقًا لِمَا بَيْنَ يَدَيْهِ مِنَ الْكِتَابِ, to confirm, to corroborate, and to confirm the books before it, وَمُهَيْمِنًا عَلَيْهِ, and to be to supersede them, So it is independent. Therefore, it had to come balanced. Independent of any other Sharia. It had to have both attributes of Jalal and attributes of Jamal, the attributes of rigor and the attributes of beauty. So it had to be a Sharia of Kamal, a Sharia of perfection, both Jalal and Jamal. So anyway, but we were talking about Musa alayhi salam and how he used to have, that sort of, whatever, I don't want to be disrespectful, whatever word that we should describe this with. Strength, vigor, rigor, assertiveness, forcefulness. So he threw the tablets on the ground, and these are tablets that Allah had given him, on the mountain. So it is something that would certainly look sort of shocking. And then he took, and this is a prophet, his brother was a prophet, so he grabbed them from his hair and pulled them around, and all of this, because he used to get this angry sometimes, alayhi salam. But did Allah blame him? No, Allah did not blame him. But you have to also understand this is his personal inclination, and we have to say, so why blame some people and not blame other people? But you'll have to understand that this is, you can't ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala why. لا يسأل عما يفعل وهم يسألون. He's not to be questioned about what he does, and everyone else is to be questioned and interrogated about what they do. But Allah is not to be questioned about what he does. Yet, deep in your mind, you will have to say that that all of this has to fit within the framework of Allah's justice and fairness. Keep in mind that what Musa was tasked for is huge, right? Wasn't it huge? He was tasked to go up to the sort of the most powerful and tyrannical of his time, Fir'aun, and invite him to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and just what he went through was enormous in his life. What Musa alayhi salam went through, from the very beginning, from the time he was thrown into the water stream, the river, what he went through in his life was enormous. So when someone is so dear to you and they have done so much for you, wouldn't you forgive them for their sort of shortcomings here and there? You would not even consider them shortcomings. You would not even think about them if they had already done so much for you. And that's what it is. That's how we should understand it. That, the closer you get to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more forgiving He will be of your shortcomings. Finally, والدرجة الثالثة اجتباء الحق عبده واستخلاصه إياه بخالصته كما ابتدأ موسى وهو خرج يقتبس نارا فاصطنعه لنفسه وأبقى منه رسما معارا. والدرجة الثالثة اجتباء الحق عبده. The third level is for the true one to select his servant. واستخلاصه إياه بخالصته. For the favor of ultimate devotion. كما ابتدأ موسى وهو خرج يقتبس نارا. Like when he reached out to Musa alayhi salam when he went out for a torch. فاصطنعه لنفسه. So he had him worked out for himself. وأبقى منه رسما مستعارة. And left of him a loaned image. The loaned image, he basically purified him for devotion to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and left for him his name and his body and his attributes by which he's recognized in this dunya. That is what is left of him, to be recognized by the people in this dunya, to be identified and recognized by his dunya. But he was actually not there. He was all with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Complete devotion to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The loaned image, temporarily loaned image, the body, the name, the attributes, his movement in this life is just for him to be identified and recognized by the people. But he was not there. He had completely vanished into, the divine in the sense of the Sunni sin for annihilation, not the bid'i or the deviant sin for annihilation. قل قولي هذا استغفر الله لي ولكم سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك اشهد ان لا اله الا انت استغفرك واتوب اليك. Inshallah, we'll come back in 7 minutes.